And I also wanted to talk to you about a religion, especially the fact that you're Christian Orthodox, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is that the same thing as Greek Orthodox? Is that something from Greek Orthodoxy or?
Greek Orthodox would be one of the Orthodox nations within the broader, what we say is the Orthodox Catholic Church. So
Okay.
Russian Orthodox, Serbian, Romanian, etc.
Okay. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. I know Gina was curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you want to ask me about?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about where Christian Orthodox falls when we're talking about Catholicism, Protestantism? I mean, because I'm a little ignorant on where it falls.
It falls into the category of the
branches.
right one, and then the other ones are the wrong ones. I'm just playing with you guys.
That's fine.
So basically, for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, you have more or less a unified East-West
Right.
Orthodox Catholic Church, we would say. And then about 1054, roughly, you get the split between the East and the West, mainly over the issue of the place of the Bishop of Rome and a doctrine called the Filioque, which relates to the Trinity. So it's kind of a really difficult, for some people, nuanced idea about what exactly the role of the Holy Spirit is in the Trinity. So basically, the church split after that, after the first 1,000 years. So that's why there's a Roman Catholic Church and then the rest of the Orthodox Church.
What was the Council of Nicaea? Was that the council that was called to talk about the issue of the Trinity, where St. Nicholas got up and slapped that bishop?
Exactly. He was pimp smacking.
That we
the
talked about
heretics.
that in
We
like
did
the third
briefly
episode.
speak about
Yeah.
that.
That's the first council, so that's 325, and yeah, they dispute the Trinity basically to smash the Arian crisis, the idea that the second person of Godhead is a creature, and so Arius's doctrine was pretty much squashed at that council, mainly through, as you said, St. Nicholas, also St. Alexander, and St. Athanasius are the heroes of that council. But yeah, so 325 is the first council, and then you've got 6 more going all the way up to 787, which comprise the first 7 ecumenical councils that Roman Catholics and Orthodox agree on. And then like I said, then you have the split after that.
And did that split preempt the Crusades in a way? Because the Crusades started in the early 1000s or late 900s.
Pope Urban in the 11th century calls it the First Crusade, and it will unfortunately so the Crusaders will, in one of the Crusades, sack Constantinople, actually, which is at that time Orthodox, and they think that Orthodox are like barbarians because they have beards. But the weird part is like that the Latins were actually hired sort of barbarians that came in and sort of looted and pillaged. But that's one of the results, I would say, of the schism. It's not a cause, but later on, that happened.
And what was the dispute of the role of the Holy Spirit?
So the 2 main disputes are whether the Pope is the supreme head of the church is the main issue, the papacy. And then the other issue is whether there is one source in the Trinity, namely the person of the Father, or whether the Son also has a role in the Father's causal position of sending or originating the Holy Spirit. So that's what the Filioque clause is,
Okay.
and that's why the Orthodox world doesn't accept that. The Roman Catholic world and the Protestant world does by sort of default. But there's other issues as well. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other, like the Orthodox don't accept the Roman Catholic doctrine of purgatory. They don't accept the sort of extreme view of Mary that we think a lot of Roman Catholics have.
What is that view, to interrupt? The view of Mary?
Well, so you had in the last few instances of the Roman Catholic dogmatic statements, Mary being called that she was immaculately conceived. So we don't accept necessarily the Immaculate Conception, and we don't accept the idea that some Roman Catholic theologians have that she's a co-redemptrix with Christ. So it's really just giving her titles and roles that we don't believe are really appropriate. So part of the Marian doctrines are also bound up with the Western Augustinian doctrine of original sin, which Orthodox don't fully accept all of Augustine's views. So anyway, it gets really nuanced, but those are some of the main issues.
With all the disagreements that what would you call them? Denominations, or I wouldn't call them denominations. Like Orthodoxy isn't a denomination of Roman or even Christianity, is it?
Well, we believe that it's the original church. So we would say pre-denominational in the sense that most denominations kind of spring from later schisms or splits.
Okay.
So that's our take. I mean, obviously other people would think that we're just one of the many denominations, but
right.
That's our take.
Despite all the differences, what is the I don't want to say goal, but the idea of Christianity in the end is just, is it living a life with Christ, or is it living life the way Christ has taught one to live life so that he ends up in heaven with God? Is that the ultimate goal, or the ultimate, I guess, I don't know how to phrase this question. I probably should have thought about it earlier.
Doctrine? You mean, what's the
No,
main
but just,
doctrine?
all these denominations have different ideas of what Christianity is, right? But what is there's got to be a common theme that they all share as far as, life after death, living through Christ and then living with Christ in heaven. I would assume that that's kind of like the end, not the end game, but the end goal.
Yeah, I think most of the denominations share that idea that is sort of the goal. And then the explanations of how that works is, I guess, clearly where we would differ. So in terms of salvation, the Orthodox view is what's called theosis, the idea that we participate in divine life to actually become deified. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, for example, not trying to unfairly characterize a lot of, say, evangelical or Protestant views. A lot of times the focus is on like morals, just being a good person, and that's what it is to live a good life. And certainly we agree that morals play into it, but our focus is also on what we could say is the metaphysical relationship, that it's not just morals, it's also a real ontological participation in God's own immortality, life, power, and glory. So there's another level, I guess you could say, to it in the Orthodox view that's not just about sort of reforming your morals.
Okay. Who do you find yourself debating with the most? Is it with other Christians, or is it with Muslims or Taoists or Buddhists or atheists?
There was no Buddhists at all for years of doing this until we had one dude finally came on a live stream the other day. And I was glad, because I was like, yes, finally, it's like the gym and we're finally a Buddhist. But they kind of have a philosophy where they don't really debate, because debate kind of, I mean, they can, but it kind of assumes certain views of logic that Buddhism doesn't really have a place for, either ors, right? And they're always trying to like get away from any either ors. But we did finally get a Buddhist dude, but he was the first in, I don't know, 5-6 years of public debating. I've been debating since I was in college. I was kind of a nerd on the debate team and doing that in philosophy class and stuff. But public debates started with Adam Kokesh about 5 years ago. And I think,
I remember.
I would say it's about even between atheists and Muslims are like the top people that we've had debates with. And then after that would be Roman Catholics probably. So, and then all the whatever else. Okay,
interesting. I wanted to ask you a question, because in one of the live streams that you did, I watched it after the fact, but you were talking about Alan Watt. You'd read something that he had said, and someone had confused it for Alan Watts. And I personally like Alan Watts a lot. Like, I've been getting into him a lot more recently. And what I wanted to ask you was, do you think, and I think I know the answer to this question, but do you think that there's any place for people like Ram Dass, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle to be almost a companion to Christianity, or the two have to be separate? You can't basically meddle in a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Taoism, or just mysticism in general, but then at the same time be a follower of Christ. I would assume you can't do that.
Well, so Orthodox Christianity is unique in the sense that the primary focus when I was talking about theosis is mystical. So it is a mystical ascent to God, and that's really the focus of Orthodoxy, is the experience of God directly in the liturgy. So that's the goal. That's what sometimes people refer to as Palimism, or it's named after the medieval theologian St. Gregory Palamas. So there is the primacy given to the direct experiential in Orthodoxy, which is missing in a lot of Protestant and Roman Catholic Christianity. But at the same time, when it comes to comparative religion, I think we actually have, Orthodox Christianity is an Eastern faith in the sense that it's not like Protestantism or Roman Catholicism focused on the reasoning faculty, even though that may sound absurd for me, given the fact that I'm constantly debating all these people. But we actually view it as just really kind of the doorway. Like, debate, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a pointer. Apologetics is a way to point you to the door, but then you got to go into the liturgy itself and experience it directly. So it's a very, as I said, existential type of faith, more so than just a rational kind of discursive faith. But there is a place for the rational discursive. And we also have, there's a lot of good Orthodox comparative religion scholars and theologians. There's a book called Christ the Eternal Tao, where we can look at those things and kind of pick out of even, Far Eastern religions, which do seek to kind of transcend dialectics, the positive aspects.
Oh, that's really interesting.
You would like that book.
Okay, cool. Well, because what I find myself doing, especially recently, I've been able to find, and this sounds so selfish when I say it, but like an inner peace. You know what I mean? But when I'm able to meditate, if I'm doing like an Alan Watts meditation or Ram Dass meditation, I'm able to find this peace in essentially what I'm looking for from the world, where I've had experiences with Christianity where, I'm listening to the Sermon of the Mount and, I feel something inside of me, a connection there, but nothing like I do with meditation. So I found myself recently moving a little bit further away from Christianity, and it's interesting that you say that the Orthodoxy has a bit of mysticism to it.
Well, be careful, because my friend, when he talks about Ram Dass, he says, "Well, Ram Dass was gay, and his name actually means Ram Dass."
I thought about that for a little. Yeah. But,
it was a cleric who told me that joke, by the way.
So was it
made
really?
It even funnier, but yeah.
No, I like Ram Dass, man. I like him a lot. But is there what? Because growing up as a Roman Catholic, you don't get a sense of any sort of mystical aspect of God. You're in there, you're just, you're repeating what the priest is saying all in unison. It's almost culty like, which I've said before. How does someone in the Orthodox faith, how do they experience that sort of mystical relationship with God as far as what goes on in a service?
So the idea of the liturgy is, and one thing that's unique to Orthodoxy that is different from Roman Catholicism, is that there was never any liturgical revolution. So after Vatican II, the Roman Catholic Church really kind of Protestantized their whole liturgy. So now you get guitar mass, you get, hippie priests, up there basically having rock and roll and this kind of stuff. And it just really degrades the sanctity of the service. Mm-hmm. And so the traditional Catholics, people like Nick, they would favor the Latin Mass because of that sort of stricture and tradition. But in the Orthodox Church, it never left. There was never any liturgical revolution. So the liturgy is basically the same as it was 1700 years ago. So the idea is that that's really the central focus of where you have that direct experience. That's why the icons and the art plays such a, we don't call it art, but to Western minds, it looks like, the pretty pictures in the church. I'm not trying to insult you guys. I'm not saying that, but to people from the outside, it looks like, there's all this pretty imagery, icons, basically. No statues or anything like that. And so that it plays a central role in the liturgy because we view it like it's supposed to be heaven on earth. It's the direct window to the uncreated. So you're going to the liturgy to experience uncreated realities in the here and the now. So that I think is very different from the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Desacralized view of worship that the post-Vatican II Roman Catholic Church kind of instituted. Mm-hmm. So at the same time as it being very ordered, it still, I think, avoids the notion of the idea that you don't have an individual experience.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Do Orthodox Christians go to confession?
Yeah, we
Same
have
way the Catholics
we
do?
have many of the same approaches. It's a little different. There's no booth. So you don't go in a secret booth and whisper to some person that you don't see. But it's more of a direct thing where it's like a spiritual father. So he knows you and you always go to that person. So he kind of gives you medicine. Whereas in the secret booth, it's more like a transaction. Like an
That's
exchange.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, that's what it is. It is the transaction. Okay, say 10 Hail Marys and you're good. You're good to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is more of a thing where you're seeking healing from the problem rather than just sort of okay, I've screwed up this week, so let me go pay my 10 Hail Marys, right?
Right.
And I know because I was Catholic throughout my 20s. So
okay, yeah. Same. It's all Catholic.